Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar in collaboration with Microsoft, Secure Cloud Cost Optimization, the IT Leader's Perspective. I'm Alex Gorel, your moderator, and I'm thrilled that you're joining us today. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll address them at the end of the session. And then we'll also be sharing two special offers towards the end of this webinar with all of our attendees. And you'll also receive access to this recording. Now I'm going to introduce our speakers. We have Darren White. Darren is Synoptek's Practice Director for Cloud Advancement. With 27 years of professional experience, he focuses on leading cloud strategy, migrations, cost optimization, and solution development. He drives public cloud growth initiatives and helps organizations unlock value through tailored cloud strategies and efficient modernization programs. Matt Murdoch. Matt leads Synoptek's cybersecurity practice with deep expertise in governance, risk, and compliance. He specializes in cybersecurity strategy, data privacy, and audit readiness, PCI, SOC 1, and SOC 2, helping organizations mitigate evolving cyber risks, and protect digital assets. And Himanshu Rao. Himanshu is a principal cloud solution architect at Microsoft. With over 24 years of experience, he leads enterprise workloads like SAP, Epic, and Gen AI on Azure, driving large-scale migrations, hybrid cloud architecture, security, performance optimization, and DevOps initiatives. Our experts will guide you through a smarter cloud strategy that covers cost and usage insights, effective cloud cost optimization strategies, balancing IT expenses and security, and real-world success stories. Darren?
Thanks, Alex. As Alex mentioned, my name is Darren White, and I run our cloud practice here at Synoptek. I realize that a number of you may have different technology backgrounds, maybe finance, etc. So hopefully this webinar will be important and valuable to you. And as she mentioned, any questions you may have, feel free to just put them in the chat. So you may ask yourself, why is cloud optimization and security matter? If you look at a lot of the cloud usage, it's continuously soaring, and as it tends to sprawl, it usually increases risk. So the two of them typically go hand in hand. The security threats and the consequences of misconfigurations are escalating, and without a strategy, it's easy to lose control of both the cost and the security posture. 68% of the cloud budget exceeds plan. Nearly 7 out of 10 organizations overspend in the cloud. That's leading to wasteful expenditures and financial issues. This overspend happens due to lack of visibility, inefficient pricing plans, and unsure resources that sit idle. 45% of our organizations report misconfigurations, leading to security events. Security in the cloud is not set and forget it. Nearly half the organizations experience security incidents caused by misconfigurations. Those can be open storage buckets, overly permissive identity access management policies, and the lack of encryption for critical data. And the goal is really just to reduce the overall waste and increase the overall protection. You will now see, we'll push out a prompt for a poll, so you may see that within your screen. Next. On this slide, cloud is assumed. So over the years, I would say the list probably 15 years, everyone has been kind of making a migration towards the cloud, either public cloud, private cloud, or hybrid. Most organizations we see sit in some fashion, typically in a hybrid model. 84% of the clients face challenges to manage that cloud spend. According to cloud computing, the top 3 technology areas are AI, security, and cloud. And I would say with all our client conversation, AI and security are probably definitely the top two. Cloud spending will reach over 800 billion before 2028, and 51% of those enterprises shift from traditional solutions to the public cloud. Next, leaders are looking at ways to adapt to new challenges. They're running new technologies as a foundation to transform and grow, to do things differently that we continue to grow through these dynamic times. Yet, how do we ensure that the technology is used efficiently, delivers value, cost savings, and delivers the desired business outcomes? 72% of the industry's pace and transformation are accelerated as a result of the pandemic. If you guys look back at when we transitioned and the pandemic was pushed upon us, most of our clients really wanted to transition to the public cloud within weeks or months. This caused a lot of challenges to migrate from on-premise domain controllers versus Azure AD back then. Now it's known as Entra ID, hybrid multi-cloud management, and overall security. We realize all of you are faced with these same challenges. 74% of the migrated workloads are being planned to be modernized. So when we typically migrate the workloads from on-premise to the public cloud, we typically do a methodology called lift and shift. Then once they're in the public cloud, we'll modernize those workloads. Could be containers, app services, etc., to give them more agility and with a more modern application stack. Next. So why are cloud costs spiraling? Typically it's because of the lack of visibility of those cloud resources usage. Without the proper monitoring tools, the struggles to track the consumption, leading to unnoticed cost increases. The over provisioning of idle resources. A lot of the times developers will turn on resources and then they'll just forget about them. So those will run 24/7, and then all of a sudden you're going to get your next monthly bill from Azure and you wonder why it increased. They can also turn on services that they were unaware of the consequences, and they're going to see some, let's just say cause some violent heartburn once they see the invoice. Unexpected egress. Most of the public cloud providers love for you to migrate everything in. They're not going to charge for the ingress, but there are some egress and data transfer fees that are unexpected and typically not baked into the total cost of ownership. So it's always nice to be aware of what the total footprint is going to cost on a monthly basis. And then also poor budgeting and forecasting. A lot of the management tools or third-party ones will show you what your average spend is and will be, just so that you know once you're talking to your CFO what the forecast spend will be and can help you prepare for those discussions. So there are multiple pricing models within the public cloud. You can either go pay as you go. That's the pricing that's purely based off actual consumption with no upfront commitments. And then there are reserved instances. That's prepaid for cloud resources for a specific period of time. 1 or 3 years, they offer significant cost savings. I would say typically 30 to 70% compared to pay as you go. These are mainly for predictable workloads. So spot instances and savings plan, these are discounted prices usually for more dynamic workloads. Next. So optimizing the cash flow. Azure Hybrid Benefits, if you guys are not aware, allows you basically to leverage your Windows SQL Server and Windows Server licenses from on-prem into the public cloud. So there are some cost advantages being able to take advantage of that licensing. Additional one is auto scaling. So look at the example I used before. The developer turns on something and they just kind of walk away. Or it's in production and it's a highly scalable application workload. For example, we had one, it was similar to eBay on the West Coast, and everyone would bid on products or items, and they would peak from 5 to 7 at night. So they really only needed around 1 or 2 web servers during the day, but between 5 and 7, we would set auto scaling so they would burst up to roughly 10 instances and allow them to support the demand, and then they would spin back down. So then that gave them the flexibility that they're only paying for those resources during those couple hours of peak usage. So again, I mentioned the reserved instance. Those are the predicted workloads. You can see roughly 70% savings. The savings plans and the spot instances, those are more for dev test dynamic workloads. And then really, you got to look at your cost management tools. We like to leverage a third party, but we also use Azure cost management. And so we really combine the two, meet with our clients on a monthly basis to really walk them through, where their target spend and cost savings opportunities lie. And then really to looking at the trends. So, if you see a trend, those workloads are going to stay static for a long period of time, maybe they're going to be a good candidate for a reserved instance. And so you can get the additional savings. And so down below, I put the ideal use cases. So think for dev tests, the spot instances, anything long term that is going to sit there for a year or 3 years, you might want to consider leveraging the reserved instances, and then also the dynamics for the savings plans. Next, what are really the business impact for the cloud cost optimizations? What are really the core objectives? The importance of aligning the cost spending to the business goals to maximize the ROI. Typically, they're going to start with a strategy. What is our strategy? Is it cloud first? What is our objective? Let's get there. Let's reduce cost. We see with a lot of migrations, it's probably a 30 to 50% cost savings migrating from a colo or on-premise to the public cloud. However, over time, without the cost management, the sprawl, and depend on what your retention policy is, et cetera, you can see those costs increase. And that's why the cost management is so critical. So the innovation, how are you going to stay competitive against your, competitors? So, if you're staying on premise, you're not going to have a lot of the new services. Microsoft, AWS, GCP, they introduce new services on a monthly basis. So it's another way to stay competitive in the marketplace is being able to modernize those applications, really take new offerings to market and capabilities. And if they don't work, you can always pull them back within a touch of a button. And then the operational efficiencies, you can simply streamline those workflows by optimizing the resources and right sizing them. In the old days, you had to continuously do the capacity planning, go out, buy that overall capacity, network, compute, and storage, and build out. Here, it's basically an endless demand of resources that you can continuously scale to. Next. Amanchu, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Darren. So Darren has outlined two items, right? So first is the staying competitive and driving the innovation is very important, right? And we see like 85% of the companies basically is going to be driving more innovation by the end of this year, actually, and kind of like they are taking the cloud first approach. The challenge there is the again, Darren mentioned the cost part of it, right? And the security. We still see like almost half of the organization see at least one outage per year, actually, as well as 82% of the organization's decision makers believe that, hey, we go in a cloud, but once we start spending a lot of resources, controlling the cloud spend is one of the challenge, like a top challenge for them, basically. Uh, Next slide. So it's very important that when you're migrating and modernizing your workload in Azure or it's important that you achieve the efficiency as well as have that migration fully secure, right? Now, we talked a lot about like a cost, right? And running the Windows server or SQL server has the more cost benefit compared to the you running the other cloud, the same thing basically, right? Because both come from Microsoft, the same vendor actually. Another way of also kind of saving the cost is relying on the native cloud inbuilt automation, right? So cloud, like in Microsoft Azure, we provide a set of services for operating to achieve that operation efficiency, basically, right? And you achieve almost 53% more when you use those inbuilt automation like a patch management, update management, and so on. And the second part is when you are migrating, the real value you will find in terms of decreasing the time to go to market is leveraging some of the modern application serverless platform as a services in Microsoft Azure, because that give you that bootstrap to kind of like go to the market and saves a lot of time and money in terms of like developing and migrating those applications. Next. And of course, it's important that many times you monitor the things, and based on you monitor, for example, if you're monitoring a setup server using the native monitoring capabilities in Azure, you will realize a lot of things which you don't require. You need to tight size it. It's oversized, or somebody is not using this application, right? So leveraging the some of those capabilities like reliability controls basically can save the cost. And the most important part, Microsoft Azure brings a lot of performance enhancement. We provide accelerated networking. We provide a lot of application acceleration from in terms of performance capabilities like a storage and the compute, which can result into a higher productivities for the end user because you achieve more improvise in a performance. And of course, there are some. So we provide in Azure a set of capabilities. Very small practices like resizing your workload or shutting down the some of the like non-production environment over the weekend by leveraging some native automation for that. You don't have to do anything, and you still save the cost, but you save a broader cost, which Darren mentioned about leveraging some native capabilities, and that's in the next slide. So example, if you are running Windows and SQL Server, you save almost 80% of the like more cost compared to running in other cloud provider. Example, he mentioned about like the reserve instance where you have a set of production workload, make sure you reserve that. So you save some discount and you can stack this discount on top of each other. So example, you can have a Azure hybrid benefit, which is kind of like bringing your on-prem Windows or even Linux licenses to the cloud can save discounts here, right? Plus, you can stack on top of that the saving plan he mentioned and the spot VMs, and altogether will help you to overall save the cost, right? Because also one of the important part is consolidating a lot of tools from multiple vendors to a single vendor, because that also give you advantage of the bundle discount plus some of the other integration benefit you have while you have the same homogeneous vendors workloads connecting on each other. Next slide. Now, we talk a lot about the security so far. Sorry, the cost optimizations and the best practices, right? Let's talk about the security, right? One of the in the cloud, we have the shared responsibility. Means if you assume that you go in any cloud and automatically you will have a full resiliency and security, that's wrong. You still need to design for that to achieve to improve your business continuity while you decrease the risk of the security, right? For example, the average cost, if you have any basically right security tools and continuous security posture management product, you can save almost $500,000 yearly, like in over 3 years, just kind of like leveraging that tool set to improvise your security posture. We also see the unplanned maintenance, like downtime, where if the server goes down, it costs a lot to the customer. So enhancing your business continuity is very important. And for that, on day one, you need to design for the business continuity to make sure you achieve that benefit of in terms of the cost, basically. And like I mentioned in the last slide, it is important that you leverage so advanced native security tools, like a native SIM solution, right, where you don't have to manage yourself, but you still are using that to hunt for the threat and remediate for that advanced threat protection, and leveraging in multiple areas, right? Because there are three areas to secure. One is securing the communication, another is securing the data, and the third is like overall security posture management and threat protection. If you leverage in all these areas a single vendor or a consolidated vendor, then you get a huge cost benefit as well, right? So it's very important that you design for overall end-to-end security. And the next slide I'm going to hand over to kind of basically Matt about like how we explain the next security reference architecture.
Thank you, Manchu. So this is something that we use as just a talking point for one slider. So hopefully it's not too busy for most of you, but it should kind of resonate on how you kind of manage your overall ecosystem today. So if you look at the far left, you have your remote users. Most people are either going to be using Microsoft 365, G Suite, etc. They're going to have a lot of those SaaS tools, etc. And then you're going to have endpoints. You're never going to get away from someone at a branch office. You're going to have networking, you're going to have wireless access points, and then you're going to have their laptops and PCs that you're going to have to protect and filter. And so those represent those kind of end devices. And what Himanshu was kind of talking, everything is consolidated into a single platform. So all those integration points have already taken place, and it allows it to be more of an easy button. So they've already tested it, vetted it, and now they just keep bringing it into the overall platform. So once they make the decision to really kind of manage within this hybrid environment, everything in the middle, these are some of the services that we offer, the cloud strategy, assessment, migrations, overall management of everything and everything, everything. And then the operations, we do the monitoring, we look at the patch management, the antivirus and malware, the cost optimization, the infrastructure, the backup, the SIM, SOC, vulnerability management, and overall server management. So all of that falls into what we would call our cloud management, and all of those capabilities as part of that service. If you go a little bit to the right, you're going to see the third-party corporate applications. Typically, you're going to have ERP, your HR, your CRM. I would say the majority of the clients that we have today, they're all SaaS products. It's either Dynamics, it's NetSuite, CRM, or Salesforce, etc. And you're going to have to still manage those resources. And then, look at a lot of the big discussions about AI, data analytics, visualization. How now can I get all that data into one place and really be a data-driven organization? So you're going to probably have to create a data lake somewhere to have small little data marts around it and pulling it for each team to kind of make critical decisions to drive the business. And then just below that, it's our security operations. All of those bullet points provide, the overall governance of the security. So, Purview is one of the Azure services that will allow you to do the data discovery and basically the data classification and the overall data loss prevention. So, especially if you're in healthcare, financial services, you want to be very critical about who has access to what data and can it be moved. A lot of the times they'll limit what they can copy and paste, and it's really might be read only, etc. But that's where you got to take into consideration what are those industry regulations and compliance that you have to adhere to for those controls and audits. So we always try to take that in mind as we architect the overall solutions, just to make sure we don't paint anyone into a corner. And then over on the right, we would say the conditional access, the identity and access. you know, Entra ID is now the new Azure AD. With every organization, some of the critical security kind of foundational services we recommend are MFA and single sign-on, to really validate who the individual is with the zero trust. So with that said, I'm going to hand off to Matt, our security lead, and he'll kind of talk a little bit more in depth about some of the security.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Darren and Himanshu. Really appreciate it, guys. So we've talked a lot about our cloud cost optimization and how do we do that with security. So the strong security posture is not really an option anymore. And as we move into a cloud environment, defense in depth is our only security strategy. The data protection requirements increase as we move to the cloud, not only to meet the compliance standards of our industry, but also just to keep your business operating, right? You wouldn't be in business if you didn't have sensitive data. As your business grows, the cost of those breaches or just the cloud sprawl that was mentioned earlier will continue to grow without a strong governance program. And folks at Microsoft and Synoptek support your businesses protect the most sensitive data, whether it's finance, PII, or other, right? So how do we do that in a defense in depth mindset? Well, first here we have our zero trust security model. You could also consider it a never trust, always verify. The best way to think of this is it's a shift away from our perimeter-based security, and it moves to security at every single interaction. So you want to verify requests and actions as if they're potentially compromised, and this sometimes gets referred to as assuming breach. To achieve this, you enforce your basics like multi-factor authentication and conditional access. And then as you start to look at your high-risk accounts, you're going to want to add those least privileges and various role-based access controls. Best analogy I have for this is the TSA. No matter how often I fly at the same airport, same airline, I have the same procedures going through security. And then once I get beyond security, there's police or canine units patrolling the airports as well. As we move away from zero trust, we have our cloud native security controls. Microsoft makes this very easy with Defender for Cloud. That offers your unified view of your security posture across both cloud and hybrid environments. And this really is a tool used by security operations professionals. And it not only does a little bit of continuous monitoring, but it's going to flag risks, and then it's going to suggest those actionable fixes. And the security ops team will probably starting to end their day in that view. When we think about data protection and encryption, especially in a cloud environment, a lot of moving parts. So as I stated earlier, securing your organization's data is critical. It doesn't just have to be PII. It could be customer data. It could be sales data, anything that makes your business your own. And when we think about industries, as mentioned before, healthcare, financial services, right, there could be significant legal requirements as well as fines for non-compliance. So Azure Key Vault makes this simple. It's your one-stop shop for encryption management, and it supports the at-rest, in-transit, and in-use data encryption. And then Microsoft Purview is every GRC professional's best friend. So when we help our clients through data classification or data retention or data loss prevention projects, we really try to instill this sense that all of these are programs. You don't just flip a switch, you don't just turn on Purview and then you have a DLP program. Purview is that underlying backbone that's going to allow organizations to support a programmatic approach to how data gets managed. Secure cloud networking often gets overlooked, but when we think about our cloud networking, we're envisioning trying to protect traffic across the cloud environment. There's many tools in the toolbox here. Some of them being Azure firewalls, DDoS protection from a cybersecurity standpoint, and then building out your security groups. But in hybrid environments, a few options to note are Private Link, which enables secure access to Azure's PaaS services, and then ExpressRoute, which can extend your on-prem networks into your Microsoft cloud. Moving on to automated threat detection and incident response. You could think of this as your SIM SOC type resources. Your security operations live and breathe in this world, and using both tools and technology and your cybersecurity professionals. This is your 24/7 focus. So as we move towards areas where AI gets enabled, the cloud gets used more and more at your organization, manual detection and response, it just won't keep pace. So deploying a SIEM, a security information and event management system like Microsoft Sentinel, will allow for those real-time security analytics. And the key there, I believe Himanshu mentioned this, right, is fine-tuning it for your business needs. So understanding what the executive leadership team and the board of directors cares about, understanding what the operators care about, and then really fine-tuning it to allow for that immediate response. And a platform like Sentinel can detect those suspicious patterns that just manual review wouldn't be able to catch. Repeated failed logins across various cloud resources would flip a flag for your security operations team, and then they could begin to investigate. And then for a little more in-depth on Microsoft products that are extremely helpful in this situation, Logic Apps and Microsoft Defender's XDR features can work in tandem for your security operations teams. These allow for automated actions and incidents to be detected. And then last, but certainly not least, the continuous security audits and compliance. Any auditing is the foundation for any security program, any enterprise risk program, and then especially in the legal and compliance space. So Azure, Microsoft created the Azure policy, which reduces the time needed for auditing, right? Again, to the point that we're addressing when it comes to cloud sprawl, Azure policy controls and optimizes your cloud so that as your business decides on a particular policy and a particular set amount of investment, it allows the companies to automate their security assessments and then flag for those misconfigurations that Darren mentioned earlier. So that was a lot, but that's defense in depth as quickly as possible. So I'll pass it back over to Darren.
Thanks, Matt. Greatly appreciate it. So now I'd like to go through kind of some real world scenarios of where we've deployed workloads to Azure, and just kind of give you a scenario of, and also a poll just popped up. So if you guys wouldn't mind checking the box and see what is your biggest cloud security concern. Alex, you mind going to the next slide? Thanks. So recently, we were working with this regional bank in the Midwest, and they really were operating out of two main data centers. So really, if you own and operate the data centers, you're going to have network circuits, you're going to have your facilities, your piping and power, all the space, the cooling, the HVAC, etc. Those can be heavily um, let's just say it's going to require a required skill set and it's going to be expensive on a monthly basis. So what this client wanted to do was evaluate what their options were and really what that uh, business case was to migrate them to the cloud. So we ran kind of a scenario if they were going to migrate all their workloads and which ones were going to be good candidates and really ran a comparison for them to make a decision. So the 5-year spend was going to be roughly 2.7 million running on premise and staying in those two data centers, or we were going to migrate everything to the cloud and do cross regional replication for their DR, and that was going to be 1.4 million. So you can see there was around a $1.3 million cost savings by migrating everything to Azure versus staying on premise. Next, please. So there's a global engineering company out of the East Coast, and they had some rapid growth for many years, and then they started to kind of sell off parts of their organization and started hitting kind of a headwind. And they had a CEO that was brought in there to really take a look at, cost saving opportunities. And we started partnering with them and trying to take a look at that. They probably had around 5 data centers and hosting facilities. Sometimes they might run them, they'll call it an MDF, a main data center facility at the bottom of one of their office buildings. And so they had a few of those with some data centers and colos. And we really were looking at their overall business case. And so they were spending around, I would say, 80,000 a month currently managing those facilities. And then we just identified which workloads could be migrated. We also performed as part of that, maybe a multiple HR systems, et cetera. We would do what we call app rationalization, ones that we can sunset. You can stop from a software licensing and from a compute standpoint. And so really the first year we probably saved them 50%, got them down to 40,000 a month. And then by year 3, I want to say that we got them down to roughly 20,000 a month. So you can see a significant cost savings with that continuous optimization of their workloads. Next. This was a healthcare provider in the Northeast. They currently had a footprint in Azure, AWS, GCP. They were a true multi-cloud client. The majority of their workloads sat in Azure, and they had, I want to say it was 20 to 30 different facility locations on the Northeast where they had multiple workloads running. Some had some dependencies of running local. They wanted to keep some of the data closer to the edge. And we looked at all of their workloads and then which ones we could migrate to Azure, and then did a large Azure migration for them, and then ran everything under our kind of long-term management. And so, we really reduced a lot of their monthly cost, their fees. We introduced reserved instances and savings plan. And so a lot of their monthly spend was completely reduced. And then they leverage our security team for the overall security, the vulnerability management, the app scanning for application security, and overall management, caring and feeding of the organization. Next, please. So now we get to the exciting part of the webinar. So we would like to offer everyone here an exclusive offer. It's a complimentary 1-hour workshop. So as a part of that workshop, we'll have one of our Azure solution architects work with someone on your team. They'll look at your overall tenant. So say you set up the overall Azure landing zone. You don't feel comfortable the way it was set up. Maybe you didn't have the skill sets. Want to make sure that, everything is solid and you're prepared for the future. And we could do kind of just a casual, workshop where we can kind of do a screen share or look in, provide detail of how the tenant's set up and some of the areas concerned, and we'll be able to provide recommendations right there on the spot for you for free. So if any of you are interested in that, you can scan the QR code, sign up, and then we'll schedule with one of our engineers and we'll go through that workshop. Next.
And then we are also offering our cloud security assessment. So we have our typically take about a week's worth of work. Be spread out in a very busy week or over the course of a couple weeks. But what this does is address some of those defense in-depth questions that I mentioned earlier. So we spend a day's worth of time doing kickoff and scoping, policy and documentation review, infrastructure and cloud review. We'll do some verification, and we will draft a report with stakeholders at various levels to ensure that it's aligned with your strategic vision. And then we kind of spend time debriefing, building out that roadmap, and then reporting out to, again, any stakeholders. The engagement pricing here, it's a fixed fee offer. And for those that sat through the webinar here, anyone that purchases this cloud security assessment will get a $10,000 credit towards future security managed services with Synoptek. And the way that we position those, either on the people, process, or the technology side, manage security operations centers, manage vulnerability identification and management work, or on some of those programmatic views. So dedicated fractional security engineers and CISO services can help support with some of those programs, right? Data retention, data loss prevention, and managing those pre-audit and audits on behalf of our clients. So like Darren said, scan that QR code and sign up if there's an interest in your cloud security assessment and ultimately working with us from a MSSP standpoint.
Thanks, Matt. So all this is truly exciting and gives us some great things to consider. There is a poll, if you don't mind taking that. Are you interested in any of the following workshops? So go ahead and click there. And but before we move to Q&A, you're welcome to put your questions in the Q&A box. I just wanted to share a little bit more about Synoptek. Synoptek is a business and strategy or business and technology consulting firm that delivers accelerated business results through advisory-led, transformative, full life cycle systems, integration, and managed services. We partner with organizations worldwide to help them navigate the ever-changing business and technology landscape, builds solid foundations for their businesses and achieve their business goals. So now I'd like to move into Q&A. We're gonna take, let's see, the questions that you've put into the chat there, the Q&A box, and we can go from there. Let me look here. I'll just read them out loud. We have a few in here right now. Keep them coming. Thank you so much. Let's see. Let's see. We're seeing our cloud costs increase month over month. What's the most effective first step to identifying what's driving that?
I would say you're going to have to analyze, what you're currently spending on. So not knowing how long you've been in there, you want to then look at the resources you provision, right sizing those appropriately based off the consumption. Because let's just say you have one CPU, 2 gigs of RAM, 100 gigs of disk. That's going to be much cheaper than 32 CPU, 128 gigs of RAM, and a petabyte or terabyte. So you want to make sure that you're leveraging the appropriate resources. And then if not, you can take advantage of that 1 hour workshop. We'd be more than happy to walk through that with you, and we can get you kind of in the right direction.
All right. Here's another one. It's more specific. We are operating 15 workloads in the cloud without adequate cost visibility. What best practices or tools would you recommend for improving this?
So you're going to have the Azure Cost Manager, you have Azure Advisor, you're going to have multiple native tools that you're going to be able to look at. We typically use a third-party tool that sits over the top of Azure just because we have thousands of customers, et cetera. And we use it kind of for FinSecOps. Um, we call it our cloud management platform. And it helps us then identify and right size, identifying the idle orphan tools. Not sure if you're going to want to be able to spin that at kind of an enterprise level, especially if your footprint's fairly small. But like the previous one, if you want to set up a workshop, more than happy to kind of guide you through, introduce you to some of the services that you might be able to get familiar with, and just give you a little coaching.
Perfect. All right, so here's another one. How do I know if we're over provisioned or underutilizing our cloud resource or
Again,
resources?
you're going to have to look at the utilization. So, if you're going to look at the CPU, RAM, the disk, you're going to understand then the performance of that capacity, and you might be able to then right size it. It's going to give you a trend if you're only using a certain percent of that, but that's where having a little bit of native knowledge, it can help you coach, and especially if it's non-prod. Pre-production environments, you don't need to give them full production type of scalability. A lot of the developers are going to ask for the moon. You got to kind of right size them, give them some realistic expectations, and then say they have a performance environment and they really want to stress test those workloads. That's where then you can kind of do a production mirror. But all those other non-prod, a lot of people, depending on the DevOps capabilities, depending on the application lifecycle, depends on how you set up all of those tenants and subscriptions. That might have been a long, lengthy answer, but hope that helps.
Perfect. And another one just came in. Let's see. How do we balance cost savings with security in healthcare?
I'll take this one. Yeah, so there's always going to be a balance with cost and security. I would say that first it starts with understanding your strategic kind of risk appetite. Obviously, in healthcare and financial services, there's prescribed risk appetite of what is legally required. But even within those industries, depending on what type of healthcare is provided and who the clientele are, risk appetite absolutely needs to get driven at the board or executive level. And then once we have a really strong grasp of what risk we're willing to take, then we could start planning a security program to meet that. But yeah, I mean, cost there's that ultimate balance of if we have cost overruns and we can't remain in business because of it, right? Then all the security in the world doesn't matter. So as the question suggests, it's definitely a balance between those two, but it starts with risk appetite and understanding it.
Thanks, Matt. All right, we have one more. You guys have any additional questions, just pop them in. All right, so let's see what does it say. What are some quick wins or low-hanging fruit for reducing cloud costs without major architectural changes?
So the right sizing, the overall reserved instances. So anything that that's going to be there for at least a year, you can change from pay as you go to a reserved instance for 1 year, and you're going to get significant savings there. And then you can do savings plan or spot savings, and that's something for It's going to be more short-term dynamic workloads. So those are going to be quick wins that you can easily see some major savings.
Yeah. And from a security standpoint, I think that under having it be very well documented and understood by all your employees of what data classification is, what's our data retention policies, and really making sure that there's buy-in for the security risk culture. You're going to save on those long-term storage costs, and you're going to save on those potential breaches if people are bought into the security strategy. And culture doesn't cost anything on paper, right? It's tone at the top and how the leadership describes security.
Yeah, and to that point is the retention policy.
Mhm.
Based off whatever your business requirement is, financial services say most of them want it for 7 years. We see clients, they'll turn it on and they'll keep it forever. So is that really necessary? I mean, you're paying 2 cents a gig, but over time, and it gets to petabytes, that all starts to add up. And so can you purge some of that data, and you can just start writing over that. So it just depends on how you want to manage it. And that's part of that initial landing zone setup of, really how you're going to architect and really secure the overall data and infrastructure.
Excellent. All right, so we'll take this last one, and I appreciate all these questions. We've implemented cost allocation tags across our cloud workloads, but we're still struggling with chargeback accuracy. How would you recommend improving that?
That is definitely a challenge. So the tagging is critical. So Azure and AWS have what they call their well-architected framework. And so the tagging for each business unit, depending on how you set it up and keep track of that, we have certain custom reports that we've been able to do for hybrid benefits and the tagging. So you can do back as the show back or chargeback capabilities. But I would say that's a constant challenge with every organization. It's not unique. So, but if that's something, if you want to talk about it through the workshop, we can give you examples of where we've introduced certain tactics or techniques in the past, and then see if that works for you.
All right. So I just wanted to thank everyone for attending and joining us today. We hope that you're walking away with valuable insights and practical strategies. Don't forget to take advantage of the exclusive offers shared today and keep an eye on your inbox for the session recording. Until next time, stay secure, stay optimized, and keep innovating.